In late September, during the 30th session of the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva, the Council discussed the rights of indigenous peoples and also the so-called expert mechanism on the rights of indigenous peoples. The Holy See underlined in their intervention that in some parts of the world, systematic violations of the rights of indigenous peoples continue.
Ranging from arbitrary arrest, torture, and extrajudicial killings to the labeling of indigenous organizations or naming leaders, activists, and organizations as terrorists. Their lack of access to basic social services and the violation of their cultural rights remains appalling. Violence against indigenous women is still pervasive in many countries. The increasing arrival of foreign investments into many countries further exacerbates the loss of lands and resources of indigenous peoples and leads to significant environmental destruction of their territories. Exploitation by the mining industry and the increase of foreign investments continue to deteriorate the human rights of indigenous peoples. This only hinders their right and capacity to pursue their own economic, social, and cultural development.
Each of the many indigenous peoples organizations that attended had their own specific objectives.
That is a more awareness of our people, not only the Arameans, but the Christian people in the Middle East. Normally you wouldn't hear them in a report, or they were just a little bit muzzled in the back of a report. But now we see that the efforts we were making here are bearing fruit in the reports we're getting mentioned, so there's more awareness of our situation.
Aside from the Council's responsibility to address all situations of concern, the question for the indigenous peoples: is there an impact caused by the UN's resolutions? I say that there is an impact because in the not so long ago past, indigenous peoples had no right to information, no right to speak at all. And now, since this has changed, the good results can be seen on a local level as well as on an international level. The General Assembly of the United Nations has affirmed that indigenous peoples are equal to all other peoples and that in the exercise of their rights they should be free from discrimination of any kind. And while the indigenous peoples continue to attend these debates to assure that their rights are recognized and protected, they also know that the most critical element and lack thereof is that of time.
It took 25 years for us to get a declaration. So I always say that the United Nations moves at the speed of a glacier, but it still moves, And maybe with climate change it might move a little faster, but it does move,